Wouldn't be a conversation on a strike day without talking to one of the chiefs of the RMT behind that strike. That's Senior Assistant General Secretary Eddie Dempsey. Good morning to you, Eddie.
Morning, Julia. Thanks for having us on.
Well, thank you very much for talking to us. We always want to hear from both sides, or all sides, in the case of this ongoing strike battle. The Prime Minister has issued a statement, as he's going to be saying before his cabinet meeting this morning, saying that the RMT is harming the very people they claim to be helping, ordinary working people who won't be able to get to work. Some of them won't get paid as a result of the strike action you're taking today. Are you harming the very people you claim to be helping?
Well, I think people in the country will be pretty clear about who's interested in working people. Is it the trade union movement or is it Boris Johnson? I'm out here stood on a picket line trying to make sure people are well paid and have got jobs. And he's part of a government that wants to see our jobs go and our wages cut. So I think it's us who's standing up for working class people and not Boris Johnson.
There's no doubt at all that the pay rise you have been offered from Network Rail and the train operating companies of 3%, same as the NHS and other public sector workers have got, that is, in real terms, after inflation, a pay cut. The reality is, though, that's the situation for most of the country. And as the Prime Minister has said, that if we have too high demands on wages, we're not going to stop inflation. We're just going to have a spiral of prices go up, wages go up, prices go up, wages go up. It just pushes up the costs for everybody because, we've already had the £16 billion bailout of the rail industry. They can't afford pay rises, can they?
Well, I'll tell you who was bailed out in the railway industry, Julia. It was the private companies that would have gone bust without that money. And a large portion of that money left this country and went to tax havens. Now, they're slashing £4 billion out of the railway industry. £3 billion of it in the worst pandemic year went to a rolling stock of leasing companies, and a lot of that money left the country. So there's money for them, but it doesn't seem there's any money for working people. So we're not just facing a lack of pay, we were also issued notice of redundancy last night. So they want to cut our jobs.
Well, yeah,
you can see the support we're getting here this morning.
Someone's tooted their horn. I mean, well done. I think there are an awful lot of people who aren't supporting you, who are desperately trying to get to work or get to exams. What do you say to those people, my listeners, my viewers, who, hard-working people, the same situation as your members, but they haven't got the ability to bring the country to a standstill to get a better pay rise. They're struggling right now. There'll be youngsters, not able to get to GCSE and A-level exams, really stressed about it. People are having hospital appointments cancelled, are having to wait months for the next one. What do you say to them today?
Well, look, people are going to find it hard during the strike, but if they're honest, they're going to find it hard every day of the year. Everybody in this country is feeling the pinch. And if people like us don't stand up for working class people and try and get them decent terms and conditions and look after their jobs, then who will?
The reality is, though, if you guys got a 7%, you're asking for to even talk of 11%, matching in inflation, so you don't get a pay cut at all in real terms. That's unaffordable, unsustainable for the rest of the country. If everybody, private sector and public sector, had an 11% or 7% pay rise, the reality is we wouldn't be any better off. Everything, the prices in the shops and everything would then go up even more. The taxes we'd have to pay for the NHS would go up more.
Look, we've had falling wages in this country for 30 years. At the same time, corporate profits have gone through the roof. Nobody's had a pay rise, and yet we've got inflation. And at the end of the day, if we don't get a pay rise, what's going to happen is not going to mean nurses or anyone else are going to be better off. It just means these corporate companies here are going to get more profits. So they're saying they can't afford wages for workers, but we can afford to subsidise low wages through benefits, and we can afford for companies to keep taking profits out of our industry who've been ripping us off for years. Society's broken and the economy's not working, so we've got to do something about that. Boris Johnson said we've got to move to a high-wage economy. He wasn't worried about inflation then. And now that we've got inflation going through the roof, he expects working-class people to shoulder the burden again. Well, we're not going to suffer that, Julia.
Is this part of the issue that the Bank of England governor a few weeks ago at a select committee hearing was saying that people shouldn't take higher wages because pay rises, because that was going to damage the economy? He, of course, on £550,000 a year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's it. And that's what we're seeing. People with very big bank accounts and very nice accents, thank you very much, telling our members they've got to be poorer. We are not going to put up with that, and I don't think people in the economy more broadly will either. I think you're going to start to see more and more people standing up for themselves and demanding better. And they should, because they deserve better.
OK, let's talk about these talks that went on till last night to try and avert the strike. You've claimed, the RMT, that actually it's the government that is the problem, but you've also said, you know, your leader McLinch says he won't negotiate with the Tory government. There's a lot of talk about this is class. Did you not? OK, I stand corrected.
I'll just clarify that. That is a misrepresentation. He was asked, is he negotiating with the government? And he said, I negotiate with the employers, not the government. That's just a statement of fact. But we have asked the government to join us to help. Now, Grant Shapps, he wouldn't lie straight in bed, that guy. He's been lying in Parliament. He's been lying on the media. Coming out with crazy statements saying if somebody says hello to a railway worker, their brakes have got to start again. Or that we don't have any technology. We're working with steam-age technology. It's an absolute load of cobblers. So we want him to get involved here. He's clearly holding the pen behind these negotiations. So he should step forward, sit at a table with us and help us get a settlement.
So you have, just to clarify, you, the RMT, you've only been dealing with Network Rail and the train operating companies. You've not had any talks with any representative of government, Grant Shapps or anyone else?
No. Not with us, no.
OK, here's a suggestion I made on social media yesterday, got quite a popular hearing. Why don't we have these pay negotiations in public? Why don't we do them on telly so the public gets to decide? Because you tell us one thing, the train operating companies tell us another thing, the government tells us another thing. We don't know who to believe. Can we actually sit and watch these negotiations in real time and then we can decide who's being reasonable and who isn't?
Well, I don't know how that would work, but I suspect what would happen is most of the actual negotiations would happen in a hallway outside. That's just the nature of negotiation.
Be on the posters. But you see, this is the thing, because, you know, these things go on behind the scenes, you know, the whole, smoky rooms, you know, that we thought these 1970s. But the reality is, the conversations you guys are having, and I know you're always by Mick Lynch's side, and you're outside Euston Station right now with your members, but the conversations that you have and what you ultimately decide has an impact on millions of other people who don't get to have a say and who aren't in the room.
Yeah, I know that's really difficult. And at the same time, when these negotiations are happening, we have thousands of members who are intrigued and want to know what's going on. But if you were to have negotiations in that way publicly, it would make it a lot harder to get to a deal, because you have to be able to speak freely and candidly with each other.
Why couldn't you do that if the cameras were on you?
Well, I think you'd be constrained. So, for example, if the employers were to make an overture to us, for example, they would be criticised publicly by the government. And if we were to make too far of an overture to the company, we would be criticised publicly by our members. So these things have to have a degree of delicacy about them.
But isn't the problem here that actually there's a lot of game playing? There's whole, you know, this is, I mean, Mick Lynch, your boss, he was saying, you know, this is class warfare and talking about this. And actually, you know, most people, they just want to earn a living and get back on their normal day.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm not saying we're engaged in class warfare, but there is class warfare happening to us. We've got some, you know, a lot of people that are very wealthy who are protecting companies that are making obscene profits, saying that our members who are working people have got to be poorer. I don't know how else you describe that but a class war. Now, look, I'm going to say something strange. Even though we didn't get to a deal last night and we ended up with, in fact, an escalation, we were issued notice of redundancy, the people that I'm dealing with in the industry are working very hard to get a settlement and are doing so, I think, quite genuinely. But my sense is that their efforts to do that have been scuppered. It's the only thing I can describe.
You think that the government wants this rail strike to go ahead?
I think they absolutely do, yes.
That's interesting. And what's the benefit for the government from this? This is just about, you know, churning it up and saying, look at the hard left. This is the alternative to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, they've got a divided party at the moment. They've had a difficult time. Boris got through with his vote, but, you know, not with great numbers. And this is a distraction. So
today's rail strike, today's rail strike affecting millions of people. Today's rail strike affecting millions of people is the fault of the government, not the RMT.
Well, it's the fault of the government for stripping $4 billion out of the railway industry and allowing billions to leave in profits and saying, rather than cut profits, what we're going to do is tear up people's jobs, tear up their conditions, and trash rail services. So, yes, it is the fault of the government.
Can I ask you one final question? Tess has messaged in. I'm asking people how the strikes are affecting them and their families. Tess says, my husband can't get to work. I can't get my daughter to her physiotherapy appointment, so I've had to reschedule, and the next appointment isn't until next month. Thank you, rail strikers. What do you say to Tess?
Well, I'd say to Tess, look, I am genuinely sorry that she's having this hardship this morning, but she's got to appreciate, as I'm sure most people in the country do, wages have been falling in this country for 30 years. People's jobs are constantly under threat. You saw what happened with P&O. If you don't have people like us who are prepared to stand up and fight to make things better for working class people, they never will be. I'm afraid asking very politely just doesn't work.
Eddie Dempsey, Senior Assistant General Secretary of the RMT Union, live there from Euston Station, where he's on the picket line there. Thank you very much indeed. Love to hear your reaction to that. Do tweet me at talkTV. We're going to hear what Tom Slater of Spiked Online makes that interview in just a couple of moments, and we're going to find out how this is hitting, once again, our hospitality sector. That's up next. This is Talk Breakfast.